Okay, so today I have in front of me the tools that I'm going to use to do a comparison. The iPhone 12 Pro Max, 13 Pro Max, 14 Pro Max, 15 Pro Max. All four of these phones were my phone the year that they came out, and then got delineated or downward spiraled down to my daughter's as I progressed to the next model. So the neat thing is, having all four of these phones in front of me, I have time to do some comparison to the cameras, because that's the big thing. That's, to be honest about it, the main difference and the main reason that I purchased these phones was mainly for their camera systems, so that I was upgrading cameras to get better shots for, not just for this channel, but more, to be honest, for my family and my vacations and things that I wanted to document. So, without further ado, we're gonna take a peek at some comparisons between these four camera systems on these four phones. So let's get started. Now maybe I should start and show the phones themselves. We went from, the different colors over the years to now the new natural titanium is the newest 15 Pro Max that I have. And how I actually set these shots up, I did each phone individually to try to get the best photo possible. I used a delay timer, just a 3-second delay, so my finger wasn't touching it, so I didn't get any vibrations from my hand. And I used my MagSafe setup tripod here to do this. So I wanted to do it as lightweight as possible, like I was going on vacation to take these photos of some scenery things. And so we're going to look at 3 different photos, well, maybe more than 3, like 5, I guess, technically, different photos that I took with all of these cameras. Now, the big thing is the 12 Pro Max has a 1x zoom. Well, I'm not going to use the wide angle zoom lens at all, but this has a 1x and a 2.5x lens for its telephoto. Then we jumped up to a 3x zoom telephoto lens with the 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max. They both have that 3x zoom lens. And then of course the big daddy on the new 15 Pro Max is out taking that 3x zoom, putting in a 5x zoom lens. So let's take a peek at what we get out of these guys. Okay, so we're gonna run down these kind of one by one. So right now I have on the left hand side of the screen, I have the 12 Pro Max camera, and on the right side I have the 13 Pro Max. So this is just a one-time zoom shot of downtown Dubuque from, well, a distance at least. And I can't argue between either of these. One is being so much better than the other. I think maybe the color's a little bit better. Definitely in low light factor in the 13 Pro versus the 12 Pro Max. And of course this is 13 Pro Max, right? So that's that. If I'm gonna take the 14 Pro Max and overplay it over here. Now we have 13 Pro Max over here, 14 Pro Max over here. We're still gaining that detail in the shadows a little bit, but we're also increasing how much sensitivity on the camera itself as well. Again, not a huge drastic difference here. We're not going to see a huge difference, right? And then we bring in the new 15 Pro Max over here. And again, we're just, I think, stepping up a little bit more, right? In terms of the detail that we're actually going to progress out of this a little bit at a time. So now I'm going to set up the actual zoom cameras. Okay, so now we're actually at the exact same mark. I just zoomed in to the most capability that specific camera has for its telephoto lens. On the left-hand side over here, the 12 Pro Max has a 2.5 times zoom lens on it. So you can see, obviously, we're gonna see a little bit more detail because we're gonna actually zoom in. But on the 13 Pro Max is when we added in that 3x zoom capability. So we're able to actually see more detail in the finer stuff because obviously we're able to zoom in more, right? And that's the big difference between these two cameras. Yes, we are changing a little bit on the sensors and stuff. Colors, I think low light or the shadow detail is definitely better on the 13 Pro Max. And then when we bring in the 14 Pro Max, we'll bring it over here. So comparing over here on the right hand side, the 13 Pro, on the left hand side we have the 14 Pro Max. Both are 3 times zoom cameras, so we're not gaining in terms of the capability of the camera itself and the lens so much as maybe a little bit better optics, but the sensors are just going to pick up a little bit more finer detail there. Not a drastic difference, not, I think, a difference that most people are going to notice, but there it is. But when we bring in the 15 Pro Max with the new 5x camera lens, that's when we really see the difference, right? We are zooming in to a point where we're getting a lot better far away photography here. We're seeing a lot more detail here in the trains. We're seeing a lot more detail here in the downtown areas. Everything looks better because we're able to zoom in more and actually see more details. Big difference on that one. And when we take this photo, and the next photo, I actually zoomed in on the courthouse here with digital zoom. So let's go to that. Okay, so now we are in the digital zoom realm. So we're taking that 2.5 times zoom camera and we're zooming in as far as it'll go. In terms of that, it's I think 12.5 times. So this is the 12 Pro at its max digital zoom on its biggest lens. That's what we're seeing here. This one is the 13 Pro Max on its 3x zoom camera, zoomed in all the way to 15 times zoom, because that's what its greatest digital zoom setting is. And so that's where we're going to see a difference here. I'm not going to drastically say these are great because of the fact that, well, digital zoom is really not where I like to do anything with, but people still use it, so I did want to at least include this. So 12 Pro Max to 13 Pro Max, we're getting obviously a lot closer here to the courthouse. We're seeing more detail, but I'm not going to say it's amazing because it's a digital zoom. Now let's add in the 14 Pro Max over here. Again, 3x zoom lens with the 15 times zoom, but you can see, look at the detail in the trees is drastically different between the 13 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max. The 14 Pro Max, everything looks better. The RB sign, a lot more capability on that. Everything just looks better. The Bull Durham sign down here on the building, the old Bull Durham looks better. Everything looks cleaner on the 14 Pro Max versus the 13 Pro Max. I think that was a big step. Other than the 12 Pro to the 13 Pro with the better lenses. Now I'm gonna bring in the 15 Pro Max 2 different ways. So first, this is the 15 Pro Max zoomed at the same 15x digital zoom. This is not the full capability of that the new 5 times lens. You know, the 3 times lens to the 5 time lens, both zoom to exactly the same 15x. I would argue that the 15 Pro takes it to the next step. We're actually seeing a lot more detail, even more than the 14 Pro Max in those trees. Just looks so much cleaner. The Kirby sign right here, I can actually read it here. It's still kind of garbled a little bit on here. Everything just looks smoother. This small sign down here in the bottom, this is a Crescent Electric sign. A lot more detail in the 15 Pro Max than on the 14 Pro Max. Just takes it to the next level. And we don't have to stop here with the 15 Pro. We can go all the way to 25 times. So this is the full digital processing capability of the 15 Pro Max. We're seeing more detail here on the courthouse than we cannot see at all on the existing cameras from any of the other phones. We're seeing more detail in the signs here on the highway, just a lot more capability. Now again, digital zoom, it's not going to look crystal clear or anything, but it is great to see what they're doing with that processing power of the new phone with the new camera lenses. So that's my photo 1. Now we're going to take a look at a couple different other photos that I took between the 4 cameras as well. Okay, so now we're looking at a building, and on this I just used the standard telephoto property of the actual camera itself. So on this case, this is the 2.5 times zoom of the 12 Pro Max. Then of course we get to the 3x zoom lens on the 13 Pro Max. You know, between these two, I'm not going to say it's huge difference. We're zoomed in a little bit, but we are seeing more shadow detail on the 13 Pro Max. Bring in the 14 Pro Max over here. Compare these, the 13 Pro, the 13 Pro to the 14 Pro Max, and we still get that shadow detail, but we're getting better contrast on the 13 Pro or the 14 Pro Max. Sorry, but again, same 3 times zoom capability on this camera. And then if we jump over to the 15 Pro, now this one I'm going to do a little different. The first one I'm going to bring in is I'm going to keep it at the same 3x zoom, which actually keeps it from using the telephoto lens, and we're actually digitally cropping the main sensor. And I would argue that this does not look as clean as the 14 Pro Max. So if you were trying to get that same 3x zoom capability, the 15 Pro Max just does not have that capability without doing a digital zoom crop sense of the main sensor. However, we can do the 5x, and if we do the 5x, we come in on the actual native lens, and things look even crisper and cleaner than the other one, and we're getting more detail because we're zoomed in a little bit better. This 5x zoom lens camera is awesome. The downside is if you liked that 3x zoom capability, you're not going to quite be as clean. So I just didn't want, that's what I wanted to show with this one is 5x zoom looks great, but if I close that, bring it back to the 3x capability, not as clean. We're seeing a lot more noise in here because it's a digital crop of the sensor. All right, and last set of photos I wanted to do, the same apartment, kind of a senior living center with a nice tree, nice cloudy sky, but nice and sunny. The sun is actually just off here, so I'm actually shooting into the sun. So it's not the best condition to shoot, but that was kind of the point. And we're going from between the 2.5 times zoom lens of the 12 Pro Max to the 3x zoom lens of the 13 Pro Max here. You can see that the crop is a little bit different. Again, shadow details are coming out a little bit more. To be honest, from the naked eye, I like this photo over here better. Personally, I think the colors look better, but I think if you were to Photoshop this, I think you'd get more detail out of the 13 Pro Max just because of that shadow detail that is definitely not coming through on the 12 Pro, right? This is just a little bit better sensor, but we're also coming in here at a 3x zoom lens. So let's bring in the 14 Pro Max's 3x zoom lens, compare apples to apples here. So here we're getting that better shadow detail at the 3 times zoom with the 14 Pro Max, but the colors are coming through a lot more cleaner. And the reason I want to say that is I'm looking at this as to be honest, the majority of people taking photos, they're not going to be photoshopping these. They're going to just try to use the photo that you get. You're not going to, you maybe throw a filter on it or something. But you know, this photo definitely looks substantially superior over this one. So the 14 Pro Max definitely wins here. So now, just like the last photo, let's bring in a 3 times zoom lens from the 15 Pro Max. Again, it's a cropped image from the main sensor, so a digital zoomed image, not as clean, right? At 3 times zoom, this does not look as good as the 14 Pro Max. So I don't use digital zoom personally. I refuse to use it. I dislike it at all. But can it do it? Yes, it's just not going to look as clean as that optical clarity that you're going to get from the main sensor. That said, we can bring in a 5x zoom capability to go right out of the sensor without doing digital zoom, and this 5x zoom, the detail is just amazing. And that's the big thing about the 15 Pro Max versus the previous generations. That 5x zoom lens is going to get you a closer shot, and that's the big item. That's the big ticket winner in my book. Yes, the actual clarity of the photos themselves, I think, are definitely a step above in almost every way possible over last year's 14 Pro Max. So we did see the capability of the cameras increase, but the big thing about the Pro Max is this new 5x lens, and that's what I wanted to highlight because I think that's the big winner. So, in all reality, quite fun to do. I will say that. It was actually more fun than I thought it was going to be comparing these. I've never really done a full comparison video with a bunch of phones, and more than anything, I was kind of, you know, I'll take some photos and see what it is. It actually kind of was more fun than I thought, not only taking the photos, but comparing them, because it's neat to see where the cameras that you have owned, right? So I've had each of these in my possession, and of course they're still in my family, but to see the progression of those lenses over increments over time, over each year, right? Because that's 4 generations of phones, and you definitely saw a difference. The 12 Pro Max and the 13 Pro Max, my biggest thing was between those two was definitely the crop sensor of the zoom lens capability. Yeah, you get more shadow detail and things like that. The 14 Pro Max took it to the next, I think, clarifying role in terms of the processing power of the phone. You could see the processing power difference between the previous generations. And then the 15 Pro Max does it doubly so. It's definitely better on processing, but it's also substantially superior in terms of its telephoto capability with the new 5x lens. So, do I think that you should upgrade? So the thing is that the new 5x zoom lens is only on the Pro Max version, right? If you want to get that 5x lens, you have to have the Pro Max. If you go the Pro, just the 15 Pro, you're going to have the same 3 times crop sensor. Now, the computational analysis of the photos on the phone, the 15 Pro and Pro Max definitely do a better job, because if I was looking at the 1 times to 1 times, 15 Pro definitely was cleaner. I would not say that most people should upgrade from the 14 Pro or 14 Pro Max to the 15 Pro if you're just looking for that capability. It is there, but it was definitely more noticeable when we were digitally zooming. The processing power of the 15 Pro Max substantially better in terms of its digital cleanup. over even the 14 Pro. Definitely way better than the 13 and 12s, right? So if you have a 12 Pro Max, upgrade, absolutely. 13 Pro Max, I would consider upgrading it specifically if you're looking for just the photo side of things. It's gonna take better photos on the 15 Pro and Pro Max. But the big thing is if you're taking it on vacations, you're taking it and it's your main camera when you're out and about with your family, and you like taking maybe wildlife photos or Vista shots where you do use that telephoto capability a lot, the 15 Pro Max 5X lens is, I think, a godsend because it's optically clear. It works really well. You get a better shot of what you're actually looking to shoot. And anytime that you don't have to use that digital zoom capability, and that is the pinch and zoom, right? If you just use your thumb and hit the 0.5, the 1X, 2X, and 5X right on the new one, or 3X on the older ones, that's great and all, that's perfect, because that's gonna keep you in without digitally zooming. The only one that's a digital zoom technically is the 2X one on the 14 and 15 Pro Max. That is a crop of the main sensor to 2X, and so you don't get the 48 megapixel, you get the 24 megapixel, right? That said, outside of that, I never pinch and zoom personally. I do not, I dislike it. I will zoom in on the image after the fact. It's not gonna be any less clear for the most part. So in my opinion, I keep it at the standard. So my 14 Pro Max that I've used last year, I used 3X zoom. That was the most I ever zoomed on it. On the new one, the 5X is gonna get used a lot because the 3X zoom was great. And I showed the difference between if I actually digitally forced the 15 Pro Max to the 3X zoom, it's not gonna look good because it's a digital zoom of the main sensor. But as long as you're okay with going a little bit further in, the 5X zoom wins. So that's my video. I hope you enjoyed the comparison between the two, or between the four, I should say. And of course, this is highlighting the 15 Pro Max because I was skeptical to upgrade before they showed all the upgrades, but the one that actually put me over the top, in all reality, was the 5X zoom lens in increasing the capability of the cameras, because that I can justify a little bit. And then of course, when Verizon and all of them do their trade-in specials, so I can take this 12 Pro Max, give it to Verizon, they give me $830 towards that phone. Yeah, we can go into all that. But that helps pay for the new phone, and I get much better clarity photos and videos on my vacation that's coming up. So thank you for watching to the end of this video. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any of these phones and you think about upgrading, I'm hoping that this at least shows a little bit. But more than anything else, let me know what you think. And we'll catch you back here in another future video review, setup, tutorial, whichever. Thanks for watching. See you soon.